So that's what I felt like reminding myself to do today. Well, Blake, let's start with you. Tell us who you are and how in the world did you end up on this live stream of all places?
Yeah, that's a great way to start. My name is Blake Reimer. I am a fourth generation farmer here, but I didn't come through as always being a farmer. I grew up on the land that my parents have. My dad grew up there. It's been in the family since 1933, and I had a couple of other careers in life. My first career was a funeral director and embalmer. I ran a funeral home here locally for 7 years, and then I got into computer software sales, and that led into a career of easier in a time when no one wanted to do online stuff in medical hospitals. So that was a good 7 years of learning the medical industry, and then I came back and tried to farm with Dad for about 3 years, and we figured out that we could either farm together or we could have a relationship, but we weren't going to be doing both of those. And so I got landed a really nice corporate job in medical sales, and was over the whole state of Louisiana and the coast of Mississippi for Drive Medical that made bent metal products, wheelchairs, hospital beds, cane crutches. And because of my previous history in selling software, I knew coding really well for the medical industry. And as a rep selling wheelchairs, I could go in and show them, if you'll get a few more codes added to your wheelchair, you can actually make money. And so I did a good job of showing them how to make money based off of what everybody else in the market was doing to make money. And it was great. Sales went crazy down there for Drive Medical. But as I was living in Louisiana, having a great life, I had this thing called an expense account where I could go get business and they paid for it, and that was wonderful. But my parents were still raising commercial chickens. They had we've been doing chickens for a long time on my farm, somewhere around 40 years. And they were in this typical situation, which is sad to hear about these days, where they'd raised chickens for 35 years, but yet at the end of that, they still had debt on the farm, and the chicken company had cut them off because they needed to make an upgrade or two. Um,
Can you
and
kind of explain how that works? So they were doing the kind of chicken raising that we tend to not encourage people to get into, which is like the big chicken houses
yeah,
for a company like Tyson or whoever.
yep.
How does that work that you get into that? And how do you end up in debt on your own property that way?
Okay, the way the system has been designed to work by these multinational corporations is that they get a farmer who doesn't have a chance to make a real good living on the farm, but he's got a few acres of land, and it can be as little as 10 or five even. And they talk the farmer into going into debt to build a barn on their farm, and the farmer has to pay that debt off by growing chickens for the company. And so then they place chickens and they bring you feed. So the company pays for the chickens and the feed. Uh, but you, as a farmer, have to pay for the barn and for the utilities. So the thing about growing chickens in the wintertime is when you get chickens, they still got to be 92 degrees inside that 20,000 square foot barn. And as the farmer, you're the one that's being told it's got to be this hot, and also you got to buy the gas. Um, and so then you grow these chickens for them for depends on the market. And each complex, when I say complex, Chattanooga market is a complex of integration. So they have hen houses, they have egg houses, they have pullet houses, and they have broiler houses, and they're managing that whole complex of system. But they're looking for a certain number of chickens to fit into this machinery they call a processing plant. And so the day that I was told when the chickens would be processed, they're just trying to match up what their customer for the market, let's say Chick-fil-A, is wanting for a full grown chicken. And they're trying to fill in the spots available for the week. And so typically, if I could grow a chicken for 43 or 44 days, I could hit a 5 pound bird. But sometimes they needed my chickens on day 38, and that's about a 4.2 pound bird. And when I was growing 100,000 chickens at a time, you're talking about 80,000 pounds difference in a flock size that I had no control over when it was going to go. And when you're talking about getting paid by the pound, that could be a swing of $7,000 to $8,000 per flock 6 times a year, as to whether you were making money or skating by or not making money. And when I came back, my goal was to pay off the debt on our farm and turn the chicken company off. 40 years is enough time for anything for that. And so the reason I came back is because they'd cut them off. And when you cut someone off, that means your farm payment isn't getting made. And I knew that Dad was carrying a lot of debt and he wasn't able to keep his life insurance at the time. And it just started weighing on me in Louisiana, having a good old time with those Cajuns and enjoying life. But yet 3 generations of work and stress and energy and effort were all going to go away to the bank.
Yep.
I think we're having a couple of internet glitches here, guys, so stand by.
It was over Halloween one day. I came home, and I know that because he called me in November to agree that I could come back and take over the whole farming operation, and try to get things back on track. And so we left Louisiana. Stephanie and I, my girlfriend, we left Louisiana in 2018, January, and moved back. And got birds placed the 3rd week of January. And they'd been 6 months since we'd had birds on the farm. And then Dad got sick the first flock. We just got chickens placed, and he got sick, and he was ill from some accidents around. And so when I came back, I thought I was going to get to help them manage their commercial chicken thing and get that back on track. Well, I went way out to the back 4 acres of meadow that the chicken company didn't know about. And I'd raise my Joe Salatin pasture raised birds back there and start my regenerative farming practice that way.
So you knew you wanted to do regenerative farming, but you also knew there was debt on the farm and a history.
Oh my gosh. Yeah. And I knew, like, from 10 years earlier, so 15, 16 years ago, Joe Salatin had these crazy videos on YouTube. And I was laying in bed, laying at the house at night watching YouTube videos of a guy who was getting paid $30 a chicken and not 30 cents a chicken. And I had decided when I went to Louisiana, it was a disagreement. And I went down there with that. They can have that farm. I am going to make my own life. But time changes things. And so when I came back, I fully expected I could probably do some organic rotational grazing and pasture birds. But Dad passed away in March after we came back in January. And I quickly found myself a commercial chicken farmer. And luckily, I had corporate experience at that time to come back to that situation, if you will. And from my corporate experience, I learned that it's different dealing with corporations than it is dealing with people around you, in the sense that the people around me are always going to try to be completely honest with me. I'm completely honest with them. We're not playing any games. If you buy a ram for me and it doesn't do good, I'll probably give you your money back or something. Like, business has to be honest, but the corporations are never honest with us. And so I didn't feel like I ever owed them an honest answer when they asked me how I was going to do it. I just fed them back whatever their lines were supposed to be and raised chickens how I wanted to. And so approaching it that way, it really helped me get through those cycles. And then I was lucky enough to find another farm that was only about 1 song on the radio away from my farm. Pretty close, accurate description of how far away it was. And it was a bankrupt farm. The guy was able to somehow walk away from it a year earlier and just left the barns as is. And I was able to negotiate with the bank that owned that and use my bank and acquire that farm of 27 acres and 4 poultry barns that matched my size for about 30% of market value. And then I got the chickens back in the barns and was able to flip that to another local young man who was just looking to figure out how to make some money. And he bought it at about 90% of market value. And that was the place where it could cash flow for him and not cause him super stress. And that's sort of where we landed on it. But I was able to take the proceeds from all that, roll them through a 1031 escrow account with the IRS. And then that general partnership ended up buying my mom's primary house. and that paid off the rest of the debt.
So how long did it take you from coming back and raising chickens how you knew you didn't want to for a major corporation to being able to walk away from that arrangement debt free?
We paid off $640,000 in 45 months.
Mm-hmm. And that whole time you were raising chickens their way, right?
Oh my goodness, yeah. And they, they tell you who can come to your farm and who can't specifically. You got to sign documents that you won't be around any family members that have backyard birds, or they could pull your contract. You get a new 28-year-old that they hired to be their service rep, and he comes in to tell me how I'm supposed to grow chickens, and he's never grown a chicken in his life. I have control issues. It comes down to I have control issues, and at some point in time, they just had too much control. But I will say, it is a way to make somewhere between $20,000 and $90,000 a year. That's a big, big range to, but it can't happen. And when I say raising chickens, when I had the 2 barns, that year I was raising 220,000 chickens at a time, 6 times a year. And so I was able to produce somewhere around 1.2 million chickens to the market. That was not fun.
How automated is that? How much physical labor is that?
There's a lot to that question. And the answer has to do like how old the barns are, how old the equipment is. You got all these electric motors, and they can break down over time. But it's very automated as long as the computers work. August the 13th, 2019, one of the hottest days of the year, and I had a main breaker in a house flip out, and an alarm went off, and I went straight there, and it took me 13 minutes to get to where I was on the farm to get to that house. And I lost 13,000 chickens in 13 minutes that day. And we had a plan in place with a contingency plan about how to deal with that. But by 5 o'clock that afternoon, we had them all buried in a really deep ditch. And that's how I lost $25,000 that day.
Mm-hmm.
Was that because it just got so dang hot in there that day?
It got hot. It was an old, 20-year-old breaker, and it flipped out. Unfortunately, it's on the other side from the generator. I have 2 65 kilowatt generators on the farm to be able to power the barns in case of power outage. That automatically flipped on, but it was on the other side, so the generator never knew to kick on. So you can, they are automated. When the chickens eat the feed in the last pan that's in the line, a motor kicks on and it fills up the whole line. And then as the little hopper inside the house empties out from that happening, another motor kicks on and it brings feed inside. So on a good day, you never have to touch the feed. The waters are on nipple water drinkers, and there's a water meter in there, so I can tell every day how much water the chickens are drinking, and it's a good indication of the health of the flock. If water goes up, and then it's down by 30% the next day, something's going on in the house.
Yep.
The computer systems are all tied to alarm systems. The newest ones are apps on your phone, so you can turn fans on and off. You can raise and lower the temperatures. There's a lot of science in how they raise chickens that way. I know a whole lot about static pressure. That it takes a static pressure of 10 to pull the air across the top of the chicken house for 20 feet, so it meets in the middle and doesn't dump down on the chickens. Airflow is real important in that. But it's also about how much can they squeeze profit out of this company. And the way that they do it is they convert corn and soy into chicken. And the more efficient that you can do that, the more money you can make. The way they pay us is they pick up my birds. Let's say they pick up my birds on a Tuesday night. They go into the processing plant and they can tell me how much the live weight of that flock was. And then they calculate how many tons of feed they brought to my farm during the flock growth. And they come up with how much my feed conversion ratio was. And when I first started 7-8 years ago in one of my adventures here trying to help Dad, a good feed conversion ratio was like 1.79 to 1.8. So for every 1.8 pounds of food they brought you, you sent back a pound of chicken. And now to be competitive in that, you've got to be down around 1.55. So 20, 30% more competitive. And the reason that matters is because they're like a bookie at a racetrack. They get all 15 farms that sell in 1 week, and they figure out what your feed conversion ratio is and how much that feed costs them and how much it costs them to grow every individual chicken that week. And they put you in a spreadsheet. And if you're at the middle, then you get your base rate of pay. But if you're below that, they take away points from you and give it to the people that grew more efficient chickens. And so the chicken company never loses money on you growing bad chickens. They still get their average. They're just taking money away from the growers that don't do it efficiently. Efficiently being, your houses are 3 degrees too warm on a summer day like this, because they're older and not as efficient. And because the chickens are a little bit warmer, they're spending time trying to get cool and not eating and growing. So anytime an animal is not eating and growing and resting, then you're losing your competitive advantage in that market.
Are you still doing big chicken like that?
He just froze.
Probably.
It's a good answer. So did you hear what John asked you, Blake?
No, if I was still taking chickens like that?
He wants to know if you're still raising chickens that way.
No. Sometimes there's two stories and they're both true. And I tell people I quit growing chickens for them, and that's a true story. The way I did it was letting the chicken houses deteriorate in a condition where they wanted me to fix them. And then I kicked them around for like 6 months and told them I was fixing stuff, and then had them come out, and then it wasn't fixed. And then they had to write me a letter from Greeley, Colorado, that their lawyers had to come up with to tell me why my contract was no good anymore. And so they could say they fired me as a grower. It just cost them like several days of labor and a lot of legal work to do it. And that's a very true statement as well. I just wanted to know that what I felt like is when people sign the notes and they take these loans on, they're given a 10-year contract with this company that they'll get chickens for 10 years. And I think that is no good at all, because if at any point in time you're not doing exactly what they want you to, they'll just withhold chickens from you.
I think it's the same thing with the pig houses too. It sounds very similar.
It started in chickens and now it's made its way to pigs, and they're trying to get cattle that way.
Yep. And before you know it, there'll be 10 pig houses there, man, and they will own you.
Yeah.
Not here.
So you had to get him to fire you. You couldn't just leave.
It was more fun to do it the other way.
So what do you still, are those structures still in place?
Sort of. The hard part that I have come to is, my goal was to pay off the debt. I didn't set enough goals for after that. And then I had a really hard time taking down infrastructure that I knew how much it took to put it there. Mm-hmm. But over the last 6 months, Mom and I have made the decision that 3 of those barns, they're 20,000 square foot each, 40 feet by 500. 3 of them are coming down because they no longer fit the vision for what I want the farm to be. And one of those is going to be a pad for RVs to go in for full hookups. So I can have 7 RV spots there with full hookups. And then the other 2 are going to have 3 glamping tents on each pad. So I have a glamping tent now on the farm that I Airbnb out. Cool. And that's done so well that we're taking down those 3 barns for those activities. It took me too long to come to that realization that even though it's a perfectly good barn, it just doesn't fit the vision for my farm anymore.
Yeah.
So
on the day you'd paid off the debt, did you just like flip a switch and become a profitable regenerative farm?
I became an unprofitable regenerative farmer.
What did that journey look like? So you knew you wanted to do regenerative farming, but there was over $600,000 in debt, which you finally paid off. Mm-hmm. And then you got yourself fired by the big chicken cartel. And then you're like, okay, so this regenerative stuff, I got to make money doing that. Is that basically how that went?
Yeah. And I had a little cushion left over from that to be able to take a year and try to figure out a cash flow opportunities and build the different enterprises on my farm to be able to make little flows of cash from different areas all the time. Mm-hmm. But while I was doing commercial chickens, I was already into rotational grazing of the cows. I had already built a no smell indoor pig pen to be able to raise my pigs through the Korea natural farming system. I had already acquired the American black belly sheep that I have on my farm and started building my flock size up. And so while I was doing the commercial chickens, I was already starting adding these different little ventures. It just became that the chicken houses being there limited my opportunity to have people on my farm, thus limiting the opportunity to make more money. And so cutting them off, it it cuts out more than you realize. When I paid the debt off, no longer did I have that $90,000 a year farm payment to make. And then I didn't have the $18,000 a year insurance bill on those barns. I didn't have the $22,000 gas bill to heat them in the wintertime, or the $18,000 electric bill to cool them in the summertime. And so all of a sudden, if I just made $25,000 of profit, I was making more money than when I was grossing $200,000 and paying all the bills. Plus, I was growing my own food, and so the grocery store bill has gone way down.
Yeah, that's a really good thing to. You can kind of hit that at both sides when you're able to get the value from your property plus bring income in. So how long would you say you worked at turning your regenerative farm from it was costing you money to starting to make money on it?
It's been about 2 years on that. And in that time, like the first year, I just didn't think about it. And the wintertime came, and all of a sudden RVs stopped coming through and glampers stopped coming through. And all these really great meat sales I had going on for pet food consumption only, by the way. I don't sell food to people for people consumption. I sell high quality, nutrient dense pet food on my farm. And when that dried up, I was like, oh my gosh, I had a good cash flow going for the summer and fall. And so last year, I knew I needed to get an off farm job for the wintertime. And I was able to get a job at a local processing plant. And that was doing a couple of things at one time, making a little weekly cash flow to get through the winter, but also building a skill level of how to turn animals into meat and learning those knife skills better. And now that translates to, I had a class 2 weeks ago on the farm for how to dispatch and clean a pig. And I had 7 people come over and pay me to watch me do my chores and ask questions. And everybody was into it. Like it was a great time. And now that's led to a couple has hired me to come to their farm in November and dispatch 2 pigs at their place up. They said between Crossville and Cookville, and then go north in the country. Mm-hmm. But we're going to do a class up there in November and let them have people over to their farm. And I'm really hoping this fall I'll do some daytime work at the processing plant, and then each weekend I'll be going somewhere to teach people how to dispatch pigs and clean them in a safe way and be able to cut them up the next day.
Awesome.
Yeah, a processing job is actually a really good fit for what you do because it ramps up so much during deer season.
Yep. And the plant I started last year because deer season hits, some of the other local processing plants don't process beef or pigs during November, December. And so that's a busy time for them to have someone be able to come in and have a skill set already there, just pick up and start deboning and cutting. The other unintended benefit that I got out of that I was not really thinking about is I don't have a wait list at the processing plant anymore. If I need to get a pig or a cow in, it's a week or two and not 6 months to a year.
Yeah, that's a big deal when you suddenly have somebody who needs to stop jumping the fence.
Yeah, exactly.
That's how things roll here.
And
so I know a lot of people are like, they want to see big ag turn farms into regenerative farms. And they're like, well, just stop doing it. What are your thoughts on that?
I mean, they're going to go bankrupt if they just stop doing it. And they won't have a farm anymore.
And they won't be able to feed that many people.
The way that I've come to grips with it is I hope that we as a society of people look back with kindness on a lot of the farmers that got into commercial farming when they did, because it was the only option that they could see back in the 70s and 80s of moving forward to make a living on the land. They just didn't have access to the information that we have now about a different way to do things, to be more in control of your sale price and your product itself. So I hope that we look back on, farmers that have been raising chickens for 30 years, as that's just the way life is for them, with some kindness and some respect for what they put in. The corporations, on the other hand, the heck with them. Cheat them every time you get a chance.
Yeah. Don't buy their stuff if you can avoid it.
If you can avoid it.
Mm-hmm. Okay, so let's go on to Korean natural farming, because that's the real reason I dragged you on here today. So,
okay.
If I wanted to raise 4 pigs, how big of a pig pen would I need? Like 4 big pigs, the kinds that get like 600 pounds big pigs.
So 4 breeding pigs, not meat pigs.
4 meat pigs.
Meat pigs. Okay.
Yeah. 4 meat pigs. How big of a pen would I need? And how do you do one that size without it smelling bad?
Yeah. I think that for me, I have a 10 by 12, so 120 square foot pen for 1 pig.
Oh, he cut up.
Oh, wait. Am I there?
So we got to 120 square feet for 1 pig.
For 1 pig. So for 4, like 500 square feet, 12 by 20, something like that. And then the Korean natural farming method is to start with stacking layers of different densities of carbon. In my main pen, I started with lump charcoal on the bottom of it, about 6 inches deep. And then I cut fresh logs and had some dried logs and old logs. I got a lot of straight logs and laid them in the pen on top of each other horizontal. So there wasn't this crisscrossing the logs. It, lay them in there. And it takes a lot of logs to build up a pen 2.5 feet tall with logs that way. But all the work on these pens is on the front end of it. After that, they're very little maintenance to take care of. And then after the logs, I put in about 1.5 to 2 feet of wood chips that have been dried. And I inoculated those wood chips with lactic acid bacterium labs, fermented rice water, basically. And then I brought pigs in about a week or 2 later. And so the charcoal acts as a diaper of smell. The logs will keep the wood chips in an aerated state, so the pigs don't pack them down and becomes anaerobic. It's always in an aerobic state. And then when the pigs do their business and poop and pee in the wood chips, the microbes encapsulate that and take out all the smell. And they also, the microbes will make their poop a organic material, an inert organic material that's not dangerous to the pigs anymore. And so as another pig may come by and check that out and eat the rest of the grains that's left in there, the pigs aren't going to get sick from that because the microbes are keeping them safe. It's 2 different organisms living in symbiosis inside the pen. And then as the wood chips deteriorate and the pigs eat away at the wood chips, I just add more wood chips on top of it with a tractor bucket and fill it back up about 6 or 8 inches at a time. And I do that about every 2 to 3 weeks. And then the microbes come up and inoculate those new wood chips on their own. And then the pigs have a nipple water that's protected so that they can't break it. So far, we're doing pretty good.
They're pigs.
A year and a half, 2.5, 3 years without breaking one so far. That one. Anyway, so the pigs stay in there. It's a confinement way of growing pigs, but it gives the pigs a chance to be a pig. They get to use their nose and build a little nest to sleep in every night. And they get to root around and look for the stuff in the wood chips. They're confined, but there's not an odor or a smell about the pen. My RVs that come through, you can tell if I have someone from Iowa or North Carolina and I accidentally say, yeah, you're down by the pig pen. They're like, hey, I did not sign up for that. I'm not going to smell pig all night. No, I'm sorry. Come on down here to this barn. And that also leads me to the 4th barn. I talked about the 3 barns and how I was going to get rid of those. The 4th one is my pig palace. I'm working on a system in there to have 2 to 3 sows in a 16 by 16 pen, and a alleyway so I can move my boar from pen to pen and let him do a breed cycle, so that I'm starting to be able to get piglets every 4 to 6 weeks, by 2 sows each time.
Is that 5 feet of material you have? Is that elevated up, or have we dug a pit where we start layering the charcoal initially?
Mine is elevated up.
Okay.
And all if you get into Korean natural farming, you're looking like Chris Trump and a few of these guys who talk about how to do this. And that's where I learned a lot of my stuff, was the YouTube University on KNF. All of them were digging down, but I feel like the reason they were digging down is they didn't have a 15-foot tall barn to go under. And since I had a really tall barn structure already, I decided to go up with mine. And it gives the pigs a nice elevated living situation for people to be able to come see the pigs at eye level. And so when you walk up to my pigs, they're looking you in the eye by standing there. And I think it's a 10-year system. I'm 6 years in, and I think I have 4 to 5 more years before the wood logs will finally deteriorate. And I'll just move the pigs to a different pen area, take everything down, and see if that's the way I want to use that barn in the future. If it is, I'll build another pen back like that.
So we're not pulling any compost out of there or anything like that until year 10 about.
And we have another freeze. We'll repeat your question when he comes
there
back.
There we go. Y'all paused on me.
Okay, so did you hear his question? So you're not pulling any compost out of that?
I'm just adding wood chips to it and letting the compost build up over the years. Now, that pen has worked very, very good. And I found that I want to sell more piglets for more people to raise their own pig for their own family. That's one of my missions, to let people know you can do this. And they come to my farm and they see this big open farm and a big barn, and they're like, oh, I'd love to do this, but I don't have a barn. I don't have a farm. And so about 3 months ago, I talked Mom into letting me build a no-smell pig pen in the carport that's right next to our kitchen door. And is it no smell? But it's getting there. It's very, very limited smell. And I use what comes out of the first pen. I put it in a tote and bring it up there to this one, because that's inoculated microbe wood chips that the pigs have already pushed out. And I just have a little scoop, and I scoop it up and throw it in on where the pig's doing its business. And over time, it's definitely becoming a very nice centerpiece of my farm, to walk up with guests and be like, and here's our pig, right by the house. And so I know it can be done, and I'm trying to show more people, like even on a small scale, you can take about 20 hours and build a pen. And then in the morning, you're talking about one little scoop of food in the pen, and you're done for the day. And then in the afternoon, one more little scoop of food. And then maybe at lunchtime, if you got a little left over, you go scrape that out in the pig pen. He's our composter, he's our recycler, and going to be some really good bacon in about 4 or 5 more months.
Now, when you say wood chips, are we using bales of like pine from Tractor Supply, or are we running them through a mulcher?
Neither. I have a crew of 6 or 7 guys that go out there and clear power lines. And then they bring their byproducts to me. So I feel like I have 7 people working full time for me with about $500,000 of equipment.
Yep.
And they bring the stuff to me, and then I just never have to pay them on Friday.
So we've had thousands of dump truck loads of wood chips from power line crews dumped here. This was a gravel pit, and now we've got 20 inches of soil. But our crews stopped using wood chippers, and they use grapple buckets, and now they dump all that in the canyon. So we haven't gotten any wood chips in 2 years now.
Oh,
ouch.
Yeah. And then the first time I met this crew, I was raising commercial chickens, and I had a concrete pad that was 30 feet by 100 that they could dump on. But then the next time they came around, I was out of chickens, and I told them, like, can we fill one of these barns up? And so I have about 15,000 square feet of wood chips that are 6 feet tall.
Yeah, so jealous of your wood chips.
And dry, right? That's the other part, is they're dry wood chips at this time.
Yeah, that is money, man. That is money.
So okay, let's go back. Go ahead. Sorry.
No, I was going to say, I just got lucky at finding this byproduct and making the relationships with the people that were making it, and then it just really paid off.
Yeah, it's real labor to run a wood chipper like that with just 2-3 guys. And if you buy, you're 70, 80 grand, you need a mini excavator to just feed trees into it.
Yeah. The one time I was trying to make my own wood chips, I rented one from a local company for $200 for the weekend. And then I had 2 young men and we worked all day long. And so for $400 and a whole day of labor, what I had was about a half of what they bring me in one big truck.
That's what we found. We had $1,000 for a weekend on the big wood chipper. Like you could use an excavator to load it. And I had 5 guys for 5 days, 10 hours a day. And at the end, we had a couple piles of, like, we didn't have anything. I'm like, holy cow.
Yeah, I did that one time and then went on the search for these companies.
Yes.
Yeah, you just drive around, look for people trimming trees.
Yeah. Where are they parking their truck? And then I take a card and I write my name on it. Here. Yep. Then when they get here, I'll offer them a pound of sausage.
Yeah, you might as well leave $100 bill on the windshield. That'll get their attention. And the easier you make it for them to come in and out. If you've got fences and gates, man, they are not coming.
No. And that was the other thing, is being a commercial chicken farm. It had to be set up for 18-wheelers to roll in here at any time and drop off feed or get chickens or drop chickens off. And so it makes me have a really good place for RVs to come. And even if they got the big diesel pushers pulling a truck, I'm like, no, just do a U-turn right down there. There's plenty of room.
Yep. Yeah. Big difference.
Okay. So point of clarification, when you talked about layering the system for your pigs, they're asking just regular charcoal that you use on a grill, or what do you mean by charcoal? That's a pretty important thing.
Yeah, no, what I mean is about a 40-hour project of clearing fences and stockpiling enough carbon wood in a big pile, and then doing another 5 or 10 hours of cutting trees down to be able to have it right next to that pile. And then as you build the big fire up, you build it in a pit so that you can pile dirt up on the sides of it, so that as you get a coal bed and then you layer the logs over it, and then you give that an hour and they burn down, then you layer another thing of logs over it and you let that burn down till it gets a nice white ash on it, and you push dirt up to the edges of it, and then you take a water hose and spray it down for about 2 or 3 hours, and then you've got lump hardwood charcoal to be able to put in the pen. It was so
basically making biochar, but you did it on large scale, right?
Yeah, I did the 55-gallon method of it. I made a barrel that I cut in half down the long ways and opened it up and made flaps and had airflow I could close off at the bottom. And you spend your 4.5, 5 hours on that, and you have 35 gallons of biochar. But that does about a 2 foot by 2 foot area for me, and I needed 16 feet by 40. And so it was so much work that the pen that I put in my house, I didn't use charcoal because I don't know how necessary it is for small scale. And the only way to find out was to build a pen and see if it stayed no smell without using the charcoal, so that I could know, because a buddy of mine, Stephen Cornett with Nature's Always Right, did a pig video about 2.5 years ago with me at my setup. Number one question I asked out of that was, my goodness, how do you make that much charcoal? And it became like a stopping point for anybody to even start trying, is they're like, I can't make the charcoal. So the newest one, I just cut that out to see, is it absolutely necessary? And it may not be.
Yeah, I was talking to somebody who built one based on your design, and he was like, I got about an inch of charcoal on the bottom.
Work. It's like your shirt says.
Yeah, it's work. Okay. How do you deal with ants in your wood chips? This person always ends up with fire ants when they have wood chip piles.
Geez, why do they got to bring these things up? I haven't even thought about that.
We do. We've got them in our wood piles. We have ants, turtle eggs, snake eggs, and lizard eggs every time we take scoops out of the big wood piles.
Oh, I haven't noticed ants in them, but also I'm in a barn covered up.
Yeah, his are dry, so the ants are going to be less attracted to that. If you have them outside, they are getting wet. I, too, do not worry about ants in my wood chip piles because I just don't care. I mean, I care when I get the fire ants on me, but I usually can tell they're there, so I take steps to not get them on me.
My fire ant battle is around my in-ground hydrants that I have buried pressurized water line for the animals with quick connects. And I use a round plow disc as the cover of that. And that plow disc creates so much heat that apparently fire ants love it. So about 3 times a year, I have to buy few bottles of the fire ant repellent stuff and carry and sprinkle over every one of those. Or I'm playing that fun game of, can I plug this in and not get bit? And you lose.
I know this game.
Orange oil works very well.
Orange oil?
Yeah.
Yeah,
Okay.
I'll send you a link to the one that works really well.
Yeah. See, I want to be as regenerative as possible, but I don't know a lot of the things that even first generation regenerative farmers know because I came out of the commercial world.
Mm-hmm.
And so it's nice for me to get perspectives of like the orange. I would love to use that instead of the fire ant chemical. So I'm here.
It melts their exoskeleton, but it won't melt your plants. And so you get to envision the ants having a horrible death where they melt from the outside in. So there's also just some satisfaction that comes from doing the orange oil drench.
Yeah, they are having horrible death.
I'll take it.
Yeah.
The vegans don't care about those small plant people. We don't have to either.
Yeah, they say mix it with boiling water. I just mix it with warm water. It still works.
Okay.
Yeah, I've mixed it with cold and it still works.
Yeah.
So.
But yeah, the charcoal question. I don't know that it's absolutely necessary.
Yeah, so your pen by your house doesn't have charcoal, and you're still not really having a smell issue there, right?
That's correct. It's a little, because it's right by the house. I go by when I get in here in the mornings and see where he's done his business for the night, and I take a scoop of stuff and just put over that. And then at lunchtime, after he's ate breakfast and done his bit, 3 times a day I go by there. But
this is one of those
very, very low smell.
Yep. It seems like every time you freeze a little bit and I talk, then you start talking again. But if I don't talk, it's just a longer gap. So
longer gap.
Yeah. So somebody wants to know if you have a website with pictures.
Instagram is my best place for that. I let my website go, and I think I should get it back, but I haven't made that decision yet. But Instagram and YouTube is where most of my social media goes to.
What's your Instagram?
It's Blake Reimer, BlakeRymer. I think that if you pull up TNMTN Farm, Tennessee Mountain Farm, but through the abbreviation, that comes up as well. There was just no way I was going to say, hey, what's your email address? It's Blake and spell out Tennessee Mountain Farm.
Yeah, the first thing comes up is your TNMTN Farm. It's there.
Okay.
With things on it, even.
I would love followers on that. I think I got one of those shadow bands on me about 6 months ago.
Your pictures are good, man. Your colors are really good.
They let me post a picture of dispatching after I dispatch a sheep, you can take a pressurized air hose and make a slit in his front leg and blow up the skin away from the body. And it makes taking that pelt off without having nicks in it just a little bit easier. And it stayed up, but I started going from like 10 or 15 new followers a week to 1 every 2 weeks. And so I'll take it. I don't care.
So they didn't like the skin balloon approach?
It was the testicles blowing up in the skin, I think, like balloons that made it sort of. TikTok wouldn't even let me post it.
Yeah.
Which is bizarre. Yeah, it's weird. TikTok's odd.
Yeah. Yeah, you can see other crazy stuff there, but nothing about farming.
Yeah.
No. You also cannot say the word deviled eggs without them taking your live stream down. Apparently.
Oh, I heard that.
Yeah, if it was your own testicles, they'd be fine with that.
Right. Yeah, that's what I was getting at. But yeah, those 2 places is where I try to upload my daily life of what's going on around the farm. But you're not going to see some kind of edited video. I'm not going to be a video editor. I'm happy to share and try to show people what I got going on. But I'm not going to spend 3 hours a night editing a video out of it. So.
Well, you got 1 new follower right here. Thanks, Nikki.
Yeah, I followed him.
2 new followers live online. Woo!
Look at that.
I already followed you earlier. What breed of pig is Blake raising primarily, and why?
And why? Yeah, there's a story about why. Whenever I was in Louisiana kicking around with friends down there, I kept on just telling them about the things I wanted to do farming. And I can remember one weekend talking to a new friend, and at the end of the weekend, he just goes, "Why are you not farming?" Well, what are you talking about? He said, "It's all you've talked about all weekend. I don't know why you're out here slinging wheelchairs when you could be farming." And that did hit a little home. But with pigs, I'd heard about the Mangalitsa pig from Hungary and how amazing they were supposed to be. And one day I was up at Benton Country Hams in Madisonville, Tennessee, and the owner was there. And he was gracious enough to give Mom and I a tour of the place, and we got to talking pigs. And I said, have you seen the curly-haired pigs? He said, oh, you mean that Mangalitsa? That's the one, yeah. He said, I've even tried it. What'd you think? I want to know. And he said, it was good, but it was just too fat. And I said, well, what's your favorite pig? He said, I like those Durocs. I said, the big red pigs. He said, yeah, I sell bacons and hams, and they're big hams and long bellies. And then he stopped and looked up and said, I guess if you combine those two pigs, that might be the best thing I could imagine. Anyway, let's go look at these bellies back here. And, it was just someone that has been in a craft for 3 generations. And he was not giving advice. He wasn't telling me what to do. He was just thinking out loud about these two things and said something. So I didn't even start the car when we got in. I said, Mom, I'm going to find Mangalitsa pigs, and we're going to find a Duroc, and we're going to breed them, and we're going to see if he's right. And so about 4 years ago, 4.5 years ago, I found 2 Mangalitsa pigs that I had to do an 11-hour road trip over to get and bring back to the farm as bred gilts. One of them lost babies because it was 4th of July when I got them, and that 11-hour trip was probably too much. One of them had babies, and then they both had another set of babies with a Duroc cross. And so now I've got about 8 Mangalitsa sows and 1 pure blood Duroc and 1 Duroc that is 25% Mangalitsa.
I'm just going to talk so he comes back. Oh, darn it. It didn't work.
It did.
Yeah.
Oh,
there you are.
Okay. So Mangalitsa and Duroc to get the best carcass meat that I can get with the nicest fat with a ratio blend. The Mangalitsa is too fat for most people to deal with. They're about 60 to 70% fat and only 30 to 40% lean meat to eat. And, you sell a pig for $1,000 to someone, and they get back about 100 pounds of meat and then 150 pounds of fat. And they're like, what are we doing with this? I'm like, you bought the pig. I would make lard into it if I were you.
A lot of lard.
But they don't know how to do that. So
it's supposed to be better in omega-3 fatty acids, though.
That's correct.
Yeah.
Yeah.
They don't know what to do with that much lard either because they're using vegetable oils to cook.
Yeah. Yeah, that's some of the changes I've been able to experience that were not intended along the way, but came to realize I'm going to cut out any seed oils now that I can make my own lard and my own tallow. And we have oil around to be able to like clean pans with, but we don't cook with it anymore.
The only time oil ever happens at my house, and it'll be like an olive oil or an avocado oil, is when somebody else is cooking for an event here, because they just cannot wrap their heads around, we're going to melt this, tallow or whatever and cook the thing. They want that quick liquid.
Then, I like doing beef tallow in the offset smoker if I'm doing some pork butts. And so when you render that tallow in the smoker, it picks up that smoky flavor. And then when you're deep frying chicken wings and smoked beef tallow, it's a really delicious.
That's a great idea. I should smoke my beef tallow now. I'm smoking tomorrow, so.
Yeah.
That's a wonderful idea.
Any more pig questions?
I don't have pig-specific questions from the audience, guys. If you want me to see your question and I missed it, just put the first word or two in all caps, because sometimes these eyes aren't what they used to be. John knows nothing about that. But I would say, I have lots of pig questions for you. My big question is, why did you decide to go with the Korean natural garden, like more confined method, with a 63-acre farm where you could rotate them if you wanted to? What made you make that choice?
Having pigs out on the farm in electric netting or electric fencing, I've done that for a few years at different times. Like I've run the pigs through the bottomlands to clear out stuff and parked them to different areas. But if you have pigs outside in electric netting, you're probably going to have loose pigs at some point in time and start chasing them around the farm and try to get them back in. Hopefully you're trained them to a feed bucket sound so that when you rattle that feed bucket, they come running to you. And right now I'm in a place where I don't have the extra time to be able to chase pigs if they did get out. And I like the environment that they're in with the Korean natural farming. But the Korean natural, why even do that? It's the craziest sounding idea is why I did it. Like you can build a pen indoors and not have a pig smell. You look like a snake oil salesman when you tell some old farmer that's been used to what pigs smelled like outside his grandfather's house. Like it doesn't make sense. And it was just something crazy enough that I wanted to see if you could do it. And so that's why I went with that method. Was it just looked like the best and most efficient way to spend time in the future was to have a very low maintenance pig pen that had no smell. And nothing about that statement makes sense when you say it out loud until you see mine in practice. And so, yeah, that's why I went down that path. It's like, if you're going to have people come to your farm, and that cutting off the commercial chicken houses has let us open up our farm to more guests. And
how many pigs do you run at a time? Like how many pigs do you have right now?
2, 7, 11, 12 or 13. Ideally, my sows would be in groups of 2 in a pen, and the boar would move, and I would have a group of piglets every month being born. I feel like I'm probably 6 months away from that. And I'm also at a point now where every litter of pigs, I'm going to be keeping the best female out of that litter to start building up a replenishment. Over time, I want to have a breed of pigs here that I've developed from the Duroc and the Mangalitsa that's not true to either one of them. And maybe even.
It's always like get the best part of what he's saying too.
Grow out. Oh, there we go.
Yeah.
Looking at how the pigs grow out and seeing what I can do to add a good meat to fat ratio. So over 15 years from now, I'd like to have a very special pig that you could only get here, and have a very special price for that pig.
Is your main product piglets?
For the pigs, it is right now. Just this week, though, my buddy Cliff Davis over in Middle Tennessee in Summertown posted this picture of a pig roasting box. And the next day I heard Carl Blake on a podcast talking about his American Hot Box pig roaster. And I've been diving into that, and I'm telling you, I'm going to have something like that. Well, if I have piglets in 2 weeks, I got 5 months to get ready for it. But he's able to turn a 150-pound live pig into $1,000 with a 4-hour pig roasting event.
Is that a Lacacha box?
Yeah. Yep.
Yeah, we had one. John Witherspoon did a pig here in one, and it was awesome.
Yeah. I mean, then you're talking about you've got runts every now and then that just aren't going to make that 300-pound weight no matter what you do. And you pull a few of them back and line up some events. Every sow that has 8 piglets, you sell 5 of them for $150, and keep 2 or 3 of them to sell for $1,000 at an event in 5 months old. It's the path that I see forward for making money with pigs. Plus, you get that instant gratification of someone eating a pig that you raised, you prepared, you cooked, and then when they eat it, they say, "This is the best thing I've ever had in my life." Anyway, I'm very excited about the future of pigs. I am able to get 150 for piglets, and I still have a waiting list for piglets because I don't know what I'm doing, and I'm just trying my best to make pigs. And I lost a few cycles along the way. I had a herd of pigs that I felt like were being pushed a little bit too much, so I gave them 8 months off. And while they were off, they were down in the woods being moved every 2 weeks to a new paddock. So I've done a little bit of everything with the pigs. I'm trying to figure out the way that's going to go forward and create a small production system. I'm not interested in large production. I'd rather make more money doing classes, teaching people how to dispatch and clean pigs and cook pigs than I would have to grow 100 pigs a year and raise them out. So I'm trying to stay small scale and more about education if I can.
Awesome. What else? So what do you do with the rest on that 60 acres other than those pigs?
I have American black belly sheep. As I started grazing cows in a rotational fashion, I realized that they are not eating everything that they needed to in the grounds. Now, I didn't know what I was doing either. and you can probably get them to, but the sheep will eat those semi forbs that the cows aren't going to eat. They're going to eat buttercup, which we had this invasive buttercup. They're going to eat ragweed. They're going to eat, a lot of different things. And so I knew I needed to add sheep to the mixture. And I knew I wanted hair sheep and not wool sheep. And in the hair sheep world, I had some neighbors that were already raising Grand Champion Katahdin sheep. So my corporate life taught me don't try to get into that war where you're trying to sell against someone who already has a fantastic flock. And I'd heard about these American black bellies and all the characteristics of them that I wanted. Hair sheep that shed, low maintenance. They do good of raising their own babies on pasture. They're parasite resistant more than other sheep. And also they look beautiful. And so it took me about a year at least, maybe a year and a half of searching for American black bellies to be able to find a flock that was close enough to me to buy. And that was 2.5 years ago. I started with 10, and now I have 29, 28, somewhere in there, American black bellies. I'm selling rams at 6-month-old to people that want a breeding ram. And then next year, I'll hit my target number of probably 40 ewes. And after that, I'll start selling breed stock of unmatched pairs, if you will. My brother and I just talked about a color coding system for the males for next year so I can know who bred which ram or which ewe. And so I do hope to have by next fall 50 to 60 6-month-olds of male and female to be able to sell.
Awesome.
And you have a special one right now. Tell us about your special ram.
Oh, I have a special ram. After 2.5 years, I have my first bottle baby ram. I'm convinced coyotes, the sheep got off the.
Oh, are you back yet?
Uh-oh, there we go.
It's like it's on a schedule or something.
I looked out and saw a brand new baby lamb in the field, but no mama around. And I wasn't sure what had gone on, so I grabbed him up and put him in the truck and tried not to touch him too much. Took him to the sheep flock, got them on the farm, but none of them would touch him. None of them looked like they had a baby. And the next day I was talking to a neighbor, and his helper said he saw 2 black coyotes at the top of the hill the day before. And because they were off of my farm, my 2 guard dogs probably weren't looking for the sheep where they were. And I think a coyote got its mama is the best thing I can come up with. I have 6 hours of hiking around 3 different farms trying to find that sheep, and nothing has turned up yet. But so I got Buddy, and I was not ready for a bottle baby. So I had to go to my hardware store, and on the way, they told me they didn't have anything. So then I went to my co-op. They had some goat colostrum. Sheep milk replacement and bottles, but no colostrum. I went to Tractor Supply and got goat colostrum and came home, and we've been bottle feeding him, hoping that Buddy makes it. He's getting stronger every day, and it's sort of fun to bottle feed baby lamb.
It's fun until you're like 2 weeks in and you haven't slept.
Yeah, I'm wondering about that 3 to 4 week time, and we're like, how long do we have to do this for? Is it 5 or 6 weeks you're supposed to bottle feed them?
I went 12 with mine.
12,
but you don't have to. A lot of people will go like 6 weeks, and then if they don't make it, they don't make it. I didn't have a good way to transition mine to a supplemental grain feed because we don't feed our sheep grain.
I've been thinking about that too.
But if there's grain around, guess what? Everybody's going to want some. So
yeah.
I thought it was more important to keep her with the flock than worry about getting a pound of grain down her without anybody else doing it. So we went longer, but it was not every 2 hours for 12 weeks.
Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah. John, I just harvested a 2.5-year-old ram yesterday, and I think he hung at about 85 pounds on my rail after being cleaned. And then the first couple of rams I harvested, I just composted most things. And then I started keeping the skulls, and I do a European mount on the big skulls that they have with those beautiful horns.
Yeah.
And this time, they spiral out. And I'm weaning out based off of body condition size, color patterns, and also the spread of the horns. And so if anybody doesn't have horns that start spreading out, if they're staying in narrow, then they're next on the list.
What kind of dogs are you running?
Great Pyrenees.
Yeah.
I would love to have some of that Anatolian or something because they seem to stay with sheep better. And then as soon as I let them off, they just went straight to the house.
Yep.
And then I put in electric netting around the dogs to try to keep them with the sheep, and they jumped over that. And then I set up two edges of electric netting, hoping the 3D would keep them out. And they just took the shock and jumped over that. I've decided they're part of the farm. I'm not going to fight this anymore.
Looks like Angie has an Anatolian she'll give you.
Yeah, the Pyrenees will wander. The Anatolians have more aggression to them also. Like they'll handle coyote load or predator load much more aggressively.
My neighbors have seen my Great Pyrenees fight off 6 or 7 in one night in a pack.
Good.
And they were leaning down, grabbing them by the back and throwing them.
That's good.
So other than that one where the sheep got off my farm, I've not had any losses since I got the dogs.
Good.
And that's good.
Oh, the first loss was horrible. We had babies in July, and then we went to see the Dave Matthews Band out at the Gorge in Washington State for a week, and came back, and there were 10 adult sheep and no baby sheep. And I think coyotes had picked off all 7 babies while I was gone.
Or hawks.
Or hawk. It could have been hawks too, or buzzards, because we have so many commercial chicken farms here. All those dead chickens out in the compost piles, the buzzards are horrible.
Yeah.
So, yeah, that's another PTSD moment of walking around finding the adults and no babies.
Yeah, I imagine. We've been really fortunate with our sheep here that I had one get sick within the first 2 months of moving in, and I ended up having a veterinarian out, and it had a brain infection, and that one did not live to breed. But while she was there, she was like, you need dogs with these sheep, because we were closing them in a barn at night because I was worried about the coyotes. And she's like, I know somebody that has 2 Anatolian Pyrenees mixes that have already killed. They were 9 months old, already killed a coyote, and the lady just doesn't want to feed them because she had bred them for somebody, trained them for somebody, and then the person didn't want them. And so I ended up it was a total score. I got 2 neutered male, know how to kill things, Anatolian Pyrenees mix, and it took us about 6 weeks to orient them to where they were completely oriented with the sheep, because they had been protecting goats. So we had to change breed and also stay with the sheep in the pasture instead of try to come back to my house and say hello, which I told you earlier. If the sheep get out, the lead dog comes down and is like, hey man, we got an issue over here. So he totally knows where I live. But most of the time they just stay with the sheep. But we have had 0 predator problems since, and I hope saying that out loud did not change my future on that one.
If you have livestock, you have dead stock.
Yeah, that's true. We've had more issues with either weird bloat or weird disease. When the sheep first got here, we had that first 6 months. Every so often there'd be a weird bloat thing. And we lost 1 to it, and everybody else we were able to get past it with just natural methods. And also every one of those has not. I sort of have taken, as much as I hate to do this because it's always the ones you like the best, we've been pretty good at not letting but sheep pass on genetics when they are susceptible to things, because I feel like that's how you end up with 3 generations from now a really weak, sickly animal. So a ewe who is a good producer and a good mother, I'll totally let her have babies until she's old if she was sick once, but then we won't let the babies pass anything on. Those are just meat babies at that point.
Okay.
Yeah. But my flock's smaller than yours. I've got about 16 right now.
It's getting exciting. I only had to dole out about $3,000 for a flock of sheep and wait 2.5, 3 years to be able to make some money. But I can see a path forward with them now. And so it was nice to have that commercial chicken money coming in for a few years to be able to get some of these projects started where I didn't have to worry about funding them on their own, that the cash flow from the chicken farm was funding a lot of it.
John, you gonna be processing any of your sheep this year, you think?
No, I've only got 5. I've got a ram I need to probably get rid of.
John's ram was so asleep on Sunday morning because I was at John's place at about 6 in the morning or 6:30. That ram was just like so out that I thought it was dead.
Just laying on his side.
He was just like, he was on his side, eyes were half open, like not moving at all. Everybody else is like sitting there with their heads up.
Well, they were probably on high alert the whole weekend. I mean, we had guns, you had machine guns, you had flamethrower, bonfires still burning out here, so they're probably in a state of chaos.
Yeah. Then I walked over there and he hopped up and ran off, and I was like, okay.
You know, I still haven't figured out a good way to have a class on how to dispatch sheep, because I call it more hunting whenever I have to take out one of my rams. Got to shoot them from a little bit of a distance because they won't get close to me enough to catch them and be able to just stick them. And I had one time where I thought I had his horns, but he had my hands. And he turned that head and I just raked the top of those knuckles. And a good friend was with me and he said, not for nothing, but you got to figure out a safer way to do this.
Yeah.
And then yesterday I learned that a 22 Magnum won't go through the front skull of a 2-year-old American black belly ram. It's going to have to be placed right behind the eyes. I'm glad people weren't around to watch that.
Yeah.
But, I did take a ram down effectively and, did the job. But just some of these things I'm learning on how to do it better that I really don't know, but I make it look like I've figured it out the whole time.
Will they come to feed?
They will get close.
Because I give them pellets each day. I just a 1 gallon, and I put it in 2 stainless steel bowls so that anytime they've ever gotten out, we can just shake that feed pitcher and they'll come to us. We can get pretty close. I mean, you could almost touch them with a rifle and dispatch them at that point.
Then it comes back. Maybe.
Yeah. Well,
there you are.
Yeah.
Okay. They're trained to sort of know what that feed bucket is. I keep a bag of alfalfa pellets here to give a treat. But I have my one older one, Hercules, that's 6 years old. He was petted a lot as a baby, so he comes up and I can rub his side. But the only other time I've ever touched the other ones is to put them up in a pen to let someone come look at maybe buying a ram, or to catch one up to dispatch it. But other than that, I haven't touched any of the others.
Yeah, we take a 1 gallon, we put it in 2 stainless steel bowls. So at any time we can get close to those things. You could almost touch it with a rifle.
Yeah, it's something I definitely need to make a little corral kind of place here to be able to, because right now I'm on an open breeding cycle with the sheep to try to build my numbers up as fast as they will reproduce. Next year, I'm going to go to a controlled breeding cycle. So probably after April, whenever they have a cycle in April to May, I'll take all the males out and I'm going to wait until November 1st to introduce them back. So I get early March babies. Around here in Southeast Tennessee, that seems to be the best time for them to hit the ground. It's still a little cool, but it's not going to be really freezing. There's no flies out yet, but yet there's already green grass starting to grow. I think that'd be my ideal time, is to have babies in March and then April, May, June, July, August. Have a sale in September and sell as many as I could in September, so I don't have to take those through the winter time.
Ours always drop whenever there's an ice storm.
It's a good time. Look, we're going freezing weathers for a week. Let's get baby lamb out here.
Yep.
I had birthing season in March and it lasted for 4 weeks because the ones who were ready when the ram came got pregnant right away, and then it took the other ones like another month to cycle. So I felt like birthing season would never end this year. And of course, it was right around the Spring Self-Reliance Festival. So I was really hoping to get to Self-Reliance Festival with everybody born, but I didn't. We had one born during Self-Reliance Festival, of course.
I wonder if I could bring Buddy up to the Self-Reliance Festival. He'll have a collar on by that time, I'm sure.
He's his bottle baby.
Yeah.
They were joking because I already had a bottle of lamb during SRF. They're like, "Why didn't you bring her?" And I was like, "Because I didn't want to hear her all night. That's why I didn't bring her."
And then also I do a small amount of pastured chicken. Last year I was trying something, brooding baby chicks and selling them at 21 days old for people to raise pastured chickens. And I learned that I was not good at that yet, and I lost a ton of money on chickens. And so this year I've done one batch of 35. I'm gonna do another batch of 50, maybe two more batches of 50, just for my family to have chicken for the year. Um, it's the weirdest thing. I still can't hardly figure out how to make money doing pastured poultry, even though people will pay $15 a pound for breast meat, for boneless, skinless chicken breast. But if you can't figure out how to move the rest of it without taking a whole bunch of time, it's hard to really pencil out it making money for me, other than having chicken to eat myself, so I'm not having to go to the store and buy the chicken that I don't want to eat. But yeah, I don't know about a good model for how to make a decent amount of money on pastured chicken would be nice to see.
And every video out there tells you that you can do it, but I mean, you got to have that client ready to buy that stuff.
I was going to say, so far, like even if you look at some of Will Harris's from White Oak Pasture, his interviews in the last 6 months, they don't know that they're making money off of chicken, and they're doing so much of it. And then Dave and Ginger Shields down in Jacksonville, Florida, like they have a model of about 500 a week, and that seems to make money for their family. But they're also having, all the kids do the labor with them. Mm-hmm. So if they were having to pay 4 other people $20 an hour to process chickens, would it make money at that point? And I'm still not sure of that.
Salatin doesn't pay hourly for processing. He pays a certain amount per bird. And if you are a faster processor, you make more money from him.
That's how I get paid to process chickens.
Yeah.
I have a friend that does about 80 to 100 a week, and I'm on his east side, the evisceration side, and I get paid.
I should time them, just so I know it's coming.
Oh, there we go.
Yeah.
One more in a week I go and I make about $35 an hour to eviscerate chickens.
What kind of birds are you running?
Cornish crosses.
Okay.
So how much breast meat do you get out of a Cornish cross in 7 weeks or 8 weeks? Because I think that's about how long you're going.
Yeah, I don't like 7-week-old Cornish crosses. Last year, I played around with letting some go 12 weeks. So I would get to a 6.5 pound, 6.5 to 7 pound whole bird. Because I'd heard all these things of if you let a chicken get that big, it's going to be tough. Well, that's not the case for this Cornish cross. They have an S growth curve. And so once they hit about 39 to 40 days, that chicken, if given the resources and the right environment, is going to put on more pounds in the next 2 weeks than it did in the first 7 weeks. There's a good growth curve through that if you feed them through it. Now, the challenge is right now feeding birds on pasture. My good friend Walter is only feeding early in the mornings, about 6 in the mornings, enough for them to get through the day, and then withholding feed because they were having heat strokes if he fed at 5 o'clock in the afternoon.
We let some of those go 52 weeks. I had three roosters, 2 of them I had beyond that, even over a year. And I would walk out there and go, oh man, that rooster died. He'd be upside down with his feet just up, and you'd flip him back over, and he had just got upside down like a turtle and couldn't get back up. They were 25 pounds.
25 pounds.
25 pounds.
So I like a 6 or 7 pound. My mom likes a 3.5 pound. But I did not find any toughness at a 6 pound Cornish cross chicken. If it was a Rhode Island Red or a Freedom Ranger, it might be. I don't know. But then I was getting 1.5 pounds of breast meat off a chicken, and so at $15 a pound, you're getting $25 or so just for the breast meat.
I go 12 weeks on the American breast chicken, and their meat's totally different, but it's totally fine. It's not so tough you can't eat it. It's a little chewier.
So
but how much breast meat do you get off then off your Cornish cross? Like, can you make money by just selling skinless, boneless breast meat and eating a lot of dark meat at your house?
You can break even doing a chicken that way, because I can get over a pound of breast meat off of it. And so if I'm getting $15 for just the breast meat, then I'm eating the wings and the legs and the thighs. The other thing I did was learn how to debone chicken just as quick as possible. And so I'll sell the boneless, skinless breast meat for $15 a pound, and then take all of the dark meat and the skin and the extra fat and somewhat freeze that, and then season it with breakfast seasoning, sausage seasoning, and grind it twice and make a breakfast chicken sausage that I can sell for $10 a pound. And so then you're able to get, $35 or so for the chicken at doing that.
Yeah, we'll buy legs and thighs from you because that's all we want here.
Yeah, it's my favorite part of it.
Yeah, same.
That's why I don't mind cutting them up, because I get the wings and the legs and the thighs.
Yeah, that's funny, because it seems like if you break even with the breast, then it's like whatever you do with the byproduct is how you make your profit.
Mm-hmm. It's the same thing with the sheep there. With if I can get $200 for a European mount skull, and I can get $250 for a really nice sheep rug, and then I can make $300, $350, $400 from the meat sales, then all of a sudden I'm putting together about a $700, $800 total price tag off of one ram. And that's definitely a level where I'm making some money off of it. And I didn't know any of those skills 6.5 years ago, by the way. When I grew up, we grew chickens. We didn't kill chickens. We didn't process chickens. We grew chickens. And so when I came back, I was just trying to get more in control of the whole process. And chickens is where I learned to start. And then we started with pigs, and then sheep. And I've done a cow on farm with some friends. And cows I'll just take to the processing plant. That's too much weight to be moving around. But for the rest of it, after 6 years or so, I feel very comfortable with the process of how to raise them, clean them, and then turn it into a meat product.
Will the processing plant give you the cowhide?
They will, yeah.
Mm.
Most of them would, if you contact your local processing plant and tell them you want a cowhide.
You better say something.
Nice,
it was 4 minutes. Every 4 minutes.
We used to have people come at the processing plant that were asking for hides. It's just a byproduct there. It's going to get thrown in the garbage.
Yeah, that's the same with the deer hides during deer processing season. They just have them at ours in like these 55-gallon drums rotting behind the place, and they throw them in a big pit and bury them.
Yeah. And there was one time where the American buckskin was the most sought after leather of Europe.
Yeah. Yeah,
I
my
can
buddy's
see why.
our friend's got a big butcher shop, and they actually compost rows of just all the innards and all the entrails. And they have a turner thing that just turns that stuff, and it's a hot compost. They cook it off, and it makes the best compost.
Oh, now that's what, since I started having all these wood chips around, my other local farmers that are right next to me, I've started asking them years ago, like, if a cow dies, please don't bury it in the woods beside your farm, because that's creating a lot of coyotes for my sheep to deal with. Bring it to me and we'll bury it in the wood chips. Mm-hmm. And now 6 years later, I've started selling composted fertilizer out of that at $25 for a little bucket load of my 25 horsepower tractor. Mm-hmm. And chicken litter for $10 a bucket load, compost for $25 a bucket load. That's turned into another sort of pretty regular income source in the springtime for people looking at raised bed gardens and what to put in it.
Yeah, we've done several hog processings here, and we take all the leftovers and put them in the chicken coops, and the chickens just run through all of that stuff. They strip it down. They'll strip it to the skull.
That's funny. I take all of my products from the chicken harvest and give it to the pigs, and they do the same thing.
Yep.
It's like a symbiotic relationship.
Yeah. And then my guy doesn't sell all of his gizzards. And so every week I'm coming home with 2 big Ziploc bags of organic pasture raised chicken gizzards. And the pigs love them. They see how many they can fit in their mouth at one time.
Yeah. Yeah. They'll eat everything.
It's always fun when you line up the heads. Here's a bucket of heads.
I get
I'm
paid by
sorry.
the heart. That's the thing. Yeah, I get paid by the heart. Collect all my hearts and count them out and get paid by the heart.
That's an interesting way to do it. You don't want a heartless bird in that situation.
I know it. It also keeps you, you got to separate those things out so he can sell those by the pound too.
Yeah, that makes sense.
Don't
I
throw
think
them away.
the thing that you've done and are doing is figuring out all of the multiple revenue streams that you can tap into to keep, like, this is how I want my farm to be. Okay, how can I make money at every turn?
Yeah. Yeah. And
Literally by turning somebody's waste stream into compost, you're making money from that.
I'm also leaning to what is available around me. And what's available for me is not available for everyone. So it's not like a blueprint that I could just tell you how to do this, because I'm in an area where 500,000 people a year are coming to raft our rivers and hike our mountains. And there's only 2 hotels close by. And so agritourism is something I chose to lean into because there's a market of people flooding to me in this area for that. So, yeah, and just how can you make every little possible revenue stream out of it? And the truth is, it's dirty, good old work. That's usually what it comes down to. I used to have this horrible saying of the most successful farmers I know wear suits. And that was back when I was in commercial agriculture, because if you had 24 chicken houses, you weren't going to those chicken houses. You were wearing a suit, driving a Lexus, and telling somebody else what to do. But now, like, I consider very successful farmers people that can actually make a living wage and eat their own food. And that's a lot more definition of success for me.
That's quite the mindset change. Okay. So if people want to connect with you, Blake, how's the best way for them to do it?
On Instagram, and then at Blake Reimer or tnmtnfarm.com. And I'm probably going to get my website back up at some point in time. I was just got slack on it. And anyway, or YouTube. I've started posting more and more on YouTube. I'm about 2 years in on some videos there. So I do series sometimes on YouTube, like 30 days of grazing. So I show, how it goes every day for a grazing move for 30 days in a row. I get caught up in seeing like, oh gosh, I've shared 15 posts about these sheep and I haven't talked about my pigs at all. And so I try to show the pigs, the chickens, the sheep, what's going on. And do a live stream while we're eviscerating chickens and show that and have people ask questions.
Awesome.
Cool. Guys, check that out. And for the audio listeners, I'll put all of those links in the show notes. And John, what do you got for what?
Can I say, if they're in and around Southeast Tennessee or within a day drive of me, and you got two pigs or 1 pig and you want it processed on farm, I'm happy to be open about the conversation for coming out and doing a class at their place.
Awesome.
Cool. Yeah, definitely reach out to Blake for that as well. John, what do you got for us today?
SOEtacticalgear.com. That's my website. On the YouTube channel that I'm on right now, I do a live every night, 9 o'clock, every day of the year. We can discuss whatever you want to talk about. And come out to Self-Reliance Festival. That happens here on the compound. And we'll see you guys in October.
All right. I'm Nicole Sauce from the Living Free in Tennessee podcast. And yesterday's show was all about 3 easy cheeses you can make at home, because making cheese is delicious. And so I highly encourage anybody who hasn't learned how to do that to check it out, see if you like it. That's at livingfreeintennessee.com. And we did just launch pre-event workshops for the Self-Reliance Festival this week, including 2 classes from Sonny Puzikas, 1 class from Chuck Peoples from Homestead Medical. And on Friday, we have a Self-Reliance boot camp where you get a whole bunch of different teachers, and you'll be starting with rabbit processing in the morning, and we're going to eat those rabbits that day. So we're going through a whole series of things. Check that all out at selfreliancefestival.com. And I hope to see y'all in October. We'll be back next week.